Coming up on this week's show, we'll look back to UFC's debut on FX and the quick finishes that took place there. Also, we'll look back at Spartan Fighting Championship, talk a little UFC on Fox this weekend, and a conversation with Strikeforce champ Miesha Tate. All that in the cage. Hello, welcome in the cage from the Ohio Combat Sports Academy, alongside the owner of the Ohio Combat Sports Academy, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, instructor and trainer extraordinaire Dustin Ware. I am merely Milan George. Welcome to In the Cage. This week we got a jam-packed show. We're going to look back at UFC's first ever event on FX. Also look ahead to UFC's next event this weekend on Fox in Chicago. Light heavyweight ramifications on the line. We'll look ahead to the Strikeforce card in Columbus. We're going to have a few words with Strikeforce Women's Champion Miesha Tate, and also take a look at some of the regional action going around, including Spartan Fighting Championship in Ashland, Kentucky a few weeks ago. But Dustin, first, UFC on FX last week, it went off with a bang, and a lot of quick fights in this one. He had some lightweight division contenders trying to make a name for themselves, and some guys stood out, some guys didn't.
Yeah, I mean, obviously what stood out for me is, unfortunately, the loss again to Melvin Gillard. I mean, to see the way he continues to just show a lack of wanting to really learn the ground game in regards to his submission defense. And that really, to me, stood out more than anything. I was really surprised by the Josh Neer, Dwayne Bang-Ludwig fight. The outcome of that, I was surprised at how he was able to finish him so quickly. But other than that, it was a great card. And two, like you said, two really important fights in the lightweight division. And we'll kind of see where everything lies after this card. Yeah,
Jim Miller and Melvin Gillard. 6 months ago, these guys were on the fast track for lightweight contention for a title shot. Both were coming off losses. Both desperately needed a win last weekend to get back in the title hunt. Jim Miller, again, coming off a loss, as was Melvin Gillard. And this was going to be an explosive fight, but unfortunately it was a very quick fight. And unfortunately for Melvin Gillard, it was a quick fight.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, and like I said earlier, I mean, Melvin just, you know, to have the amount of experience he has and just to never have really spent the time to learn how to effectively use his strength and his athleticism to defend submissions. And we're not talking just because it's Jim Miller. I mean, Miller's a great black belt, but I mean, in all his losses, I mean, what is it, 8 or 9 losses now have come the same exact way. You know, I just think it's I don't know if it's ego, it's bravado, if it's just extreme overconfidence in his ability to get out of those positions. But I just think really he needs to take some time to reevaluate his training going forward.
Yeah, Jim Miller wins via rear naked choke, 204 the very first round. From Melvin Gillard, he falls further down the lightweight division ladder, while Jim Miller getting his name back in there in lightweight contention for a title shot eventually at either Frankie Edgar, the current champ, or Ben Henderson, who will face Frankie Edgar in Japan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what would really be interesting is if Aldo were to move up. I mean, I think that would make a great first fight for Aldo at 155 pounds instead of letting him go right into a title fight. But Miller, you know, like I said, the loss Miller had before the Gillard fight, I don't think necessarily knocked him down too much. I think Gillard needed this fight more than Miller did, considering he was finished so quickly in his last time out. Miller has consistently been one of the top 155-pound fighters, was really on the fast track, and took a fight he didn't even have to take when he did lose his last fight. So, you know, I think Miller's definitely in the run. I still think he's going to have to wait and see what happens in Japan in February, but he's definitely, I would say, the top contender right now.
Yeah, and also kind of going along with, piggybacking on what you were saying there, Jim Miller in his losses has looked better than Melvin Gillard certainly has in his losses.
Absolutely.
So, also the co-main event on this card was Josh Neer, the dentist, going against Dwayne Bang-Ludwig, and maybe Dwayne Ludwig was maybe still flying high from the fact that he officially got the quickest knockout in UFC history. This fight, it was over pretty quickly as well. Josh Neer and Dwayne Ludwig going at it, co-main event of UFC on FX1. And Dwayne Ludwig, you know, he's known for having a good knockout power. He had some offense early on, but it was just, in the end, it just ended up being too much Josh Neer.
You know, I said last week, I mean, the one thing Josh Neer brought to the table was a wealth of experience who are well-rounded in every aspect of the fight game. And Dwayne Ludwig is going to bring those kind of skill sets. But at the end of the day, I think his experience just allowed him to put himself in position to be successful. I mean, you can see from the highlights, he was willing to stand with what many consider to be the most elite 155-pound striker in the division. And, you know, was able to kind of muscle him up, put him up in the cage, and make it the kind of dirty fight he needed it to be to capitalize on this type of scramble, this kind of opportunity. And once he locked up that guillotine, it was pretty much a wrap.
Yeah, and Dwayne Ludwig forced the tap first round, 3:04 of the first round. Dwayne Ludwig loses to Josh Neer. All right, ramifications from this fight. Dwayne Ludwig, okay, he falls out of the top 10 for sure in the lightweight division. Josh Neer, does he move up in the top 10?
You know, does Neer move up? Yes. I mean, it was a good win. Any win inside the octagon is going to be considered a good win.
Do you consider this an upset, by the way?
No. If you remember last week, I didn't say it, but I said Neer could pull this out. If he can get it on the ground and control the fight and create a scramble, Neer would be able to win it, mainly due to his experience and the fact that he's been in, you know, training environments and been in the cage so many times. And the fact that Dwayne Ludwig is definitely considered an elite level striker, but he's got a good ground game. But a guy like Neer who can beat you up with elbows, who's so experienced, it was just going to be a tough fight for him. Not an upset. I think Neer definitely proved that he's still relevant in the 155-pound division, regardless of how long he's been in the UFC, even though he's kind of taken some breaks here and there due to injuries and whatnot. But I think Ludwig is definitely going to take a step back just a little. Not a big one. I mean, is he in the top 10? Probably not right now. I think he gets a fight on a early prelim card or maybe an FX show. I don't think he was co-main event status. I really was surprised for this show. I think if it had not been an FX card, this would have been a prelim fight or maybe a early fight on the show kind of matchup. I think it just happened that those two were the two names that people knew. A lot of people knew Ludwig because he does like to knock guys out. But I think, you know, Neer really helped himself. Because, you know, obviously, like I said, any win's a good win, but I definitely think he moved himself into maybe the top 10, maybe lower 8, 9, 10 spot.
And with a win over Dwayne Ludwig, that certainly brings Josh Neer's name into the forefront to casual, even the hardcore MMA fans, because he was kind of an afterthought for a while, right, frankly.
Yeah,
so it's a good win for him for sure. Also on this card, Pat Perry defeated Christian Moorcraft via knockout in the first round. No surprise there. Pat Perry really needed to win. Christian Moorcraft, just very slow, methodical, just looks lost in the cage. It actually looks out-athleted, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? He just is slow.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we mentioned this last week. I mean, I think athletically he is a step behind a lot of the guys that are in the heavyweight division. The fact that he is a true heavyweight, we're talking about a 6'3", 6'4" guy that really hovers around the 260-pound mark. To me, what was most impressive in this fight was Moorcraft's submission game. I mean, he really showed that he actually has a jiu-jitsu game. I know he trains there, I believe, in the Syracuse, New York area. And, you know, he's been really around the jiu-jitsu community for a while now, really trying to work on his ground game. I was really shocked at some of the submission attempts he was going for, nearly had Barry in an armbar, I believe. And so, to me, if anything, he did show that he has some well-roundedness to his skill set. He's not just a big guy. He's not just a body that's going to throw in there and have some MMA wins. That he does have some relevant technical skills that would make him a workable heavyweight. Maybe with some work with maybe he needs to get with like a CrossFit or some kind of strength and conditioning coach that can really maximize his size and add some true power and explosiveness to his games. I think that's what's really lacking. He's too slow for a lot of the smaller heavyweights like Barry or like Kane or like Junior Dos Santos. But he's not necessarily the power guy like a Brock or an Alistair Overeem. He's kind of an in-betweener. And so I think for him to really see his potential as a heavyweight, he's going to need to find the coaches and training staff that can really maximize his size and really develop some power in his game.
Yeah, also on the UFC and FX card, wrapping up the main card there, Mike Easton, a majority decision winner over Jared Papazian. And this is a 29-28, 30-27, 29-29, so judges all over the place there. And that's a whole different show for a whole nother day. We talk about judging in MMA. It's an ongoing argument. You know how we feel about it. All right, coming up, the UFC returns to the Windy City this weekend. Light heavyweight ramifications on the line. The winner will get a shot at the champion, Johnny Bones Jones. How's it going to play out? We'll tell you next in the cage. The Ohio Combat Sports Academy, Central Ohio's premier MMA training facility. You're back in the cage alongside Dustin Ware. I am Milan Jordan. Hey, thanks for tuning in to us on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to that. Also, check us out on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll give you news and notes throughout the week. Whenever fights are going on, we'll tell you what our thoughts on what's happening and other happenings around the region, and also the UFC, Strikeforce, Bellator, and whatnot. So, by all means, check us out on social media. This weekend, the UFC returns to the Windy City. They're going back to Chicago. UFC on Fox 2. The main event in this is a couple of really good light heavyweights. One who's established, one who's looking to make a name for himself, as Phil Mr. Wonderful Davis takes on former light heavyweight champion Rashad Evans. Rashad Evans, 16-1-1 in his MMA career. He's won 3 straight, 6 of his last 7. He desperately wants a shot against Johnny Bones Jones.
Yeah, I mean, I hope Rashad is not overlooking through it. I really don't think he is. I think he knows what this fight means to him in the grand scheme of things, and he knows that a fight with Jones is just sitting there waiting on him. All he has to do is go in and capitalize on Phil Davis's inexperience, and maybe perceive bravado that he considers himself such a great wrestler. And I think he's going to find out real quick in this fight that wrestling alone is not going to do it.
And Rashad Evans, he's a former champion. He's fought guys like Tito Ortiz, Rampage Jackson, Lyoto Machida, Forrest Griffin, Chuck Liddell. Phil Davis, meanwhile, he's 9-0. He's impressive starts his career. The only real name he's fought is Little Nog. We know Rashad Evans will get a title shot with the win. If Mr. Wonderful Phil Davis gets the win, does he deserve a title shot?
Whether or not he deserves it or not, he's probably going to get it because of such a high-profile win. The fact that this fight is on network television and potentially millions of people are going to see it, I think would give him the leverage he would need with the UFC to allow him to slide into a title shot. Add that to the fact that he would be undefeated, the fact that he's got a wrestling pedigree, and that he's just beat what's considered the #1 contender, regardless of what his status was in terms of the rankings. I definitely think he would still get a title shot.
Now let me ask you this. You talked about Rashad Evans possibly overlooking Phil Davis. Not that he would, but he could. This is a fight that was supposed to take place back at UFC 133 in August. Didn't happen because Phil Davis was injured. The fact that Phil Davis is inexperienced, and also on top of that, maybe a little bit of rust, is he really swimming upstream at this one?
I don't think so. No, I mean, I think he knew nothing changed in terms of his opponent. He knows who he's fighting. Nothing changed in Rashad's game. Everyone knows Rashad is an extremely athletic, is a very evasive fighter in the cage, has tremendous wrestling, not as good as Phil Davis. And Phil knows that. Phil knows he's the better wrestler. Where I think Phil has to be more concerned is that true knockout power that Rashad is shown to have, not just in his hands, but in his kicks. I mean, we all saw the highlight reel every other time the UFC's on TV of him knocking out Sean Salmon. And so he's got tremendous power. I think Phil Davis is prepared for this fight. I look at him a lot like a John Jones. He's really wanting this opportunity, and I think he's going to try to maximize this opportunity and take everything away from it. Let's just hope he doesn't let the experience take over. The experience of being that #1 guy, the experience of being the final fight on TV. Everything that goes with being in that spotlight. Let's hope it's not too hot for him and that he's able to go in there and put forth his best foot. Because if not, Rashad Evans has been there. He's been to the top of the mountain. He wants that belt back. And if Phil Davis is not mentally prepared for this fight and willing to do the things in and out of the cage, he will get beat and beat badly.
And also, #1 contendership on the line in the middleweight division. Michael Bisping goes against Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen was originally supposed to fight Mark Munoz. Mark Munoz bowed out because of injury. I believe elbow surgery. Took out some bone chips in his elbow about a week and a half before this fight. So Michael Bisping now gets the #1 title shot, or the fight for #1 contendership going against Chael Sonnen. And with the way these guys talk trash, too bad this fight wasn't booked months in advance, because that would be a lot of fun. But just in the 10 days before the fight, it's been entertaining. How do you see this one playing out?
To me, this is the fight I think everyone's going to want to watch. I mean, honestly, this is one of the better main event, co-main event fights that the UFC has put together in some time. Chael is just an awesome fighter, and he's actually a more fun person just to listen to. But the fact that he realizes the opportunity he has. All jokes aside, I read an article recently where he says, all things aside, I am very honored to be in to have this opportunity, not just for the chance to fight Anderson Silva, the man that I think that he thinks he beat, But to have the opportunity to be a co-main event on what is probably going to be another, hugely watched MMA event, to be there in the United Center, to have this fight against Bisping, which, you love him or hate him, everyone watches him. And this is going to be a great fight. I think Chael is going to relish the moment, but I think he's going to come out and give everything you saw in the Anderson Silva fight. You saw how good he looked in his last fight. I think Bisping is going to have his hands full in this one.
Yeah, Chael Sonnen wants Anderson Silva in a real bad way, much like Rashad Evans wants Johnny Bones Jones in a way. So hopefully they'll focus for their sake. They're focusing and not overly hungry to where it kind of takes them out of their mindset. We shall see. Michael Bisping has won 4 straight fights, 5 of his last 6. The lone loss coming at the hands of Vanderlei Silva in Australia, where some people thought Bisping actually won that fight. Meanwhile, Chael Sonnen 4-2 in the UFC. Again, the winner here will get a shot at Anderson Silva, possibly in Brazil later this summer. Also on the main card, you got Damian Maia going against Chris Weidman. Damian Maia has won 3 of 4. He's 15-3 overall. Chris Weidman, he is undefeated 3-0 in the UFC.
Weidman has been making some rounds recently in the media saying that he thinks he could submit Damian Maia. That would never happen. Now, I know you should never say never in MMA. You're getting punched in the elbow and kicked in the face, and so a lot of things can happen. And the old saying for jiu-jitsu guys is the first time you get punched in the face, you become a brown belt. The next time you get hit, you're a purple belt, and so forth. That's not true when you're fighting Damian Maia. This is probably, outside of Rousimar Pujolas, the most elite grappler in MMA. Now, Rousimar is maybe a more feared grappler because he gets a hold of your ankle and only bad things happen at that point. But Damian Maia is dangerous from everywhere. On top, on bottom, in the clinch. He's shown to have a good takedown game. I'm not saying that he could take down Weidman. I'm saying that if Weidman tries to take him down, it could be a very short fight. Damian Maia is dangerous from every angle, can really be elusive on the ground, and really nullify a lot of people's attacks. That said, Weidman does have a set of skills that will make the fight interesting. He's going to have to go in there and make this fight, out wrestling. He's going to have to go back to college, go back to that style of just grind him out wrestling, get on top, almost be boring in his approach to beat Damian Maia, because he only needs an inch. If you give him any space from his back, he can sweep you, he can submit you, he'll escape the position. Damian Maia is that dangerous of a jiu-jitsu practitioner. He's one of the last few guys in MMA that truly, solely believes, much like a Machida believes in his karate, Damian Maia truly believes in his Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And if you give this guy an inch, he can really capitalize and snap something off.
All right, so we both are on record. We think Damian Maia is going to win. Do you think it's going to be over quickly?
No, because I think, it's hard to say. I think if Weidman comes out there and tries to really put the pedal to the metal and he tries to just bulldoze right through Maia, that's the mistake he can make. If he tries to rush him, he's going to need to get on top, maybe grind him up on the cage a little bit, make this fight a more grimy, dirty kind of fight, and just kind of drag it out. Maybe show, because Maia's been shown to sometimes have questionable conditioning. Maybe drag this out a little bit, hold him, frustrate Maia. Not giving him space. Who cares if he gets booed? The win's all that matters. And then maybe he can pull something out. But if he tries to go out there and be super aggressive, he could fall victim to a submission. The only way Weidman really wins this fight is if he's smart, and instead of trying to get the takedown, he just controls the fight, keeps it on his feet, and just picks Maia apart, and then makes Maia make the bad shot out of desperation. That's where I could see Maia losing this fight, but I'm still pulling for Maia.
Yeah, and Damian Maia too. He could fight maybe a more safer fight because he knows that Chris Weidman might be more aggressive, and then just wait for him to make that mistake, whether it's early in the fight, later in the fight, middle round.
You got 15 minutes to win.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be done in the first round. It doesn't have to be done in the first minute. If Maia has that opening, then take it. And so doesn't mean run into his fist 25 times to try to get him on the mat. You got to be smart about what damage you're taking early in the fight, especially if the game plan is to try to maximize your one set of skills that you do really well. So, Maia has to be smart with how he's going to play that out, but I still think Maia can pull this out.
Yeah, the UFC, again, returning to free television on Fox this Saturday in Chicago at the United Center. Should be a great card there. We'll recap it next week, let you know what happened there, who's going to face Johnny Bones Jones for the light heavyweight title, and who's going to face Anderson Silva for the middleweight championship. Speaking of championship, Strikeforce, a title will be on the line when it returns to Columbus on March 3rd, Nationwide Arena. Miesha Tate, the Strikeforce 135-pound women's champion, is going to put her belt on the line against Ronda Rousey. Had a chance to speak with Miesha Tate. You'll hear that interview next in the Cage. The Ohio Combat Sports Academy, Central Ohio's premier MMA training facility. Welcome back in the cage alongside BJJ Black Belt Dustin Ware. I am Milan Jordan. As we mentioned during last week's show, Strikeforce returns to Columbus Saturday night, March 3rd, Nationwide Arena. The main event, a couple of ladies going at it. Ronda Rousey, 4-0 in her MMA career, will challenge for the 135-pound championship as Miesha Tate will put her belt on the line. Had a chance to speak with the champ last week. Here's Miesha Tate, what she thinks about the upcoming fight with Ronda Rousey.
Last time we saw you fight, Miesha, you won the belt for Marloes Kunin. How's life as a champion been treating you since then?
Awesome. I love being the champ. I intend to keep it that way.
And I know you've been doing a lot of interviews, and some of those you've said that Sarah Kaufman is more deserving of a shot at your title right now than Ronda Rousey. Why is that?
Well, I feel, the fact that she was promised the title shot next, they brought her on TV and interviewed her during a break round of my fight with Marloes, and they basically told her, that she was next in line, and she's 14-1, and she's done a lot inside our division. She's a former champion, and she actually even holds a win over myself from a few years back. So it's kind of would be interesting to market that aspect of it. And then there's Ronda, who has been impressive so far. She's 4-0, not against what I would consider any top contenders by any means. But nonetheless, she's finishing her fights quickly, and she has her Olympic judo background, which, also have to respect that as well. But still relatively new in MMA, less than a year into her career, and, all of her fights have been in a division that's much more scarce than the 135. She's been fighting at 145, so has yet to come down. And, I just think that Kaufman was more deserving of this title shot at this time.
Have you talked to Strikeforce officials about this, like Scott Coker and them? Do you think maybe from their perspective they put this fight together because they feel it's a more intriguing matchup with you and Ronda, or because of the marketability factor?
Well, absolutely, and that's what I understand as well. There's two ways, to look at it, and I still think that Sarah Kaufman, no matter what, even after I fought Ronda, I still think that rightfully it should have been her. However, it is an entertainment business, and their job is to deliver the fights that the fans want to see the most. And I feel that they're doing their absolute best to ensure the future of women's MMA, to get the most draw, to get the most eyes on us, and really solidify the women's 135-pound division and get us some recognition. And I think that the fight people would like to see the most at this point, that's really getting a lot of attention and a lot of coverage, is me versus Ronda Rousey. And for that, I completely understand why they would want to put that fight together, and I'm totally okay with it.
How's training been going for this fight for you?
Great. I started my training camp, right after the first of the year, and I knew that I was going to be finding out soon who I was fighting, and the chances that I was fighting pretty soon. So I just started training, and things are going really well. I feel healthy, and everything's great.
All right, and Ronda Rousey, she is 4-0 as a professional. All those fights lasting just over 2 minutes. I think 2 minutes 18 seconds or something like that. They've all been by arm bars. So. But this is also her first fight at 135. Do you think that's a huge advantage for you there? Do you think she would have trouble maybe with the weight cut there, and that's where you could take advantage?
Well, I definitely think it's going to change things for her. For one, when you're lighter, your body works different, and you have to adjust to that. So dropping the weight class, and I believe all of her judo matches have been above 150. So it's going to be a little different body dynamics for her. She's not going to have as much power as she does at the heavier weight, so that's going to be something she has to adjust to. And I feel like I'm one of the strongest women in the 135-pound division. And, I don't know if she'll make it or not. I don't seem to, after seeing her, I don't seem to doubt that she would make it. Would not make it, excuse me. I don't see any reason why she wouldn't. She looks like she's close enough. But she doesn't get a pound allowance, and so she has to be 135 on the dot.
Okay, and you've had several fights, but this will be your first in a main event. Is the preparation for that, being the main event on a card, give you a different kind of mindset or preparation as you go into this?
Well, it just means more. I know that there's a lot more writing on this, and I think it's a great fight to put together for me right now, because it's motivating in a number of ways, in that I realize I have a lot of responsibility in representing women's MMA, and to be quite frank, I'm just not a big fan of Ronda. There's quite a few things that I don't like about her, and I always think that makes for an interesting fight, because I guess of the kind of the animosity or dislike, I really not just want to beat her in a fight, but I really want to actually beat her up.
Okay, and you said that you don't like her. There's some things you don't like about her. Elaborate on that. What are some of the things you don't like?
Well, I feel that she's kind of self-righteous, and she feels really, that she's entitled to this and that, and I don't think that she's done enough in our division or even really in our sport to warrant the title fight yet at 135. And I think I didn't really like the way that she went about getting it as well, in that her saying basically I'm marketable, and I'm 4-0. I know I don't have a lot of experience, but I'm marketable, and you're marketable, so this fight makes sense now based on marketability. And my argument was, well, that's all fine and dandy, and I'm for marketing. I market myself up the wazoo, but I don't ever ask for something that I haven't earned based on marketability. I feel I really worked my way up the ranks. I've been the longest signed female athlete to Strikeforce, and I fought my way, deservingly so, up to the title, and I beat the title, the number one girl, Marloes Kunin, by earning it. I never pulled the marketability card. I never said, I deserve this because of anything other than my skill set and how I deliver in the cage. Marketability being a bonus on top of that, and that's how I feel it should be. And to use that as leverage over other fighters that aren't as feminine as Sarah Kaufman, I didn't feel was fair necessarily. But I guess to each his own, and she had to be doing something right, because she pretty much talked herself into the title fight.
All right. And let me ask you this: Cyborg Santos, she just got suspended for 1 year for taking steroids. She was looked at by many as a dominant force in women's MMA. Almost like a Mike Tyson type thing. Just indestructible. Well, with Cyborg out of the picture and Gina Carano not fighting, looks like not anytime soon, how comfortable would you be, taking on a role as, the quote unquote the face of women's MMA?
Well, I still believe that there's a lot more women now, that we don't have, just one face. I think that a lot of us do a great job of representing women's MMA, but I do realize that there's role models, and people are going to look up to 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 stars, particularly to kind of represent all of women's MMA. And, if I'm given that opportunity, I would definitely do it with pride, and I'll always do my best to represent the rest of the women, because it's not just me. I didn't get to 12-2 by not having anybody to fight. All of us women all work extremely hard in this sport, and not all of us get the due credit. And I would definitely be proud to be one of the women who says and is able to kind of speak for all of women's MMA through my ability in the cage.
All right, last question for you there, Miesha. How do you see your fight with Ronda Rousey playing out?
Oh, you're the first one to ask that, actually.
Really?
All the interviews. Yeah, at least today anyways. What I really want to do is just frustrate her. I will take a win any way, shape, or form. I feel like I'm very dynamic, much more than she is. And so I have plenty of ways to win this fight. I feel that she has one, and that's armbar. I have a whole arsenal of submissions. I have knockout power, and, the wrestling ability as well, I feel I'm plenty fine to be able to shut down her judo and capitalize on my own game plan. So I don't know yet. All I know is I really want to punch her really, really hard. Maybe sneak a few elbows in there too.
There you go. Absolutely. Now, you're comfortable on the ground. She is basically just known as an armbar specialist at this point. That's all she's done. Do you feel like maybe she's kind of a one-trick pony, and then you would feel more comfortable on the feet as opposed to on the ground for this fight?
I'm always comfortable on the ground no matter what. I may have more of an edge on the feet. I'm not, I'm not really sure exactly, but I do know that wherever it goes, they will be prepared. And, I definitely like to keep in mind for people that, I did go to the FILA 2008 World Grappling Championships, where there was something, I believe, about 49 different countries represented, and that's about as high as it gets for the submission wrestling anyways, and I represented the United States, and I grappled at in the 158-pound division, and I was only weighing 142 at the time, and I took a silver medal. And with that being said, I think that's more applicable to MMA because there's no gi in that. That is, a huge part of, it's basically MMA without striking, whereas she's doing judo, and she took a bronze medalist in the Olympics, but she's wearing a gi, so I would like to ask her, how's she going to deal with my wrestling without a gi? Everyone's like, oh, how are you going to deal with her judo? Well, how's she going to deal with my wrestling? How's she going to deal with my broad skill set? I feel like I'm bringing a lot more to the plate than people realize, and, they hear Olympian and they're like all wowed by it, I respect it, but, I don't think it's really anything I'm going to have a problem with.
All right, real good. Well, Miesha, thanks for your time. Good luck against Ronda Rousey, and we'll see you in Columbus March 3rd.
Thank you.
Strikeforce 135-pound champion Miesha Tate gets ready to defend her title Saturday night, March 3rd, here in Columbus at Nationwide Arena as she goes against the undefeated challenger, Ronda Rousey. And, Dustin, what does Miesha Tate need to do to keep her title after March 3rd?
I really think Miesha's going to need to utilize her wrestling ability and also really her experience of being in the cage and using her striking and using her wrestling to control Ronda's attempts to try to get into the clinch and utilize her judo skills. If Miesha wants to be successful in this fight, she's going to have to find a way to safely be able to stay in the clinch and out of the clinch because, we spoke before, Ronda Rousey is an Olympic caliber athlete. She's a bronze medalist. If she can get her hands in a good position on Miesha, she can throw her. And it really doesn't help Miesha to go in and try to shoot and take a leg or anything because really any of those attempted takedowns are going to potentially put her in a position to be on the back and be taken down by Rousey. And she doesn't want to be on the bottom. She does not want to be on the bottom if she wants to be successful in this fight. So I really think what Miesha's going to have to do is really control the placement of the fight. Not necessarily get trapped up on a cage, keep it in the center of the cage, and utilize her experience and her striking ability and use her wrestling solely as a way to keep the fight on the feet. If she gets into a grappling match of sorts, any kind of over-under position, she could be in a lot of trouble against someone as skilled as Ronda Rousey.
Should be a great fight, and of course in the weeks leading up to it, we'll talk about that fight more, and also the rest of the card. Strikeforce again returning to Columbus Saturday night, March 3rd at Nationwide Arena. All right, coming up, we got one final segment. We'll take a look at what's going on around the region. Spartan Fighting Championship had a great fight card recently. Also, NAAFS heading to the Mountaineer State. Talk about that next in the cage.
The Ohio Combat Sports Academy, Central Ohio's premier MMA training facility.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Milan Jordan alongside Dustin Ware. Hey, don't forget to check us out on Twitter at InTheCageShow. Also, like us on Facebook. Subscribe to our page. We'll give you news and notes throughout the week, let you know about upcoming appearances. Also, our opinions during the week when things happen in the world of mixed martial arts, whether it's on the big stage, the regional stage, wherever. We'll always have our opinion 24/7, so be sure to check that out. All right, well, with the regional scene explosive here around in Central Ohio and actually throughout the region and the surrounding states. In Kentucky recently, Spartan Fighting Championship, SFC 11, a fantastic card in Ashland, Kentucky a couple of weeks back. The seating capacity was about 2,500. They must have had at least 4,000 people in there. Just an absolutely great event there. And in the main event, someone that you're very familiar with, Jason Butcher, defeated Jared Honeycombs. And Jason Butcher here going against Jared Honeycombs in a catchweight 195. Early on, it seemed to be that Jared Combs had his way, but then Jason Butcher was able to get the victory.
Obviously, Jared was a huge favorite coming into this fight. He had many more wins on the professional level than Jason did. But the big difference here is that Jason is truly is a star in the making. moving down to 195, which is the lightest he had ever been in an MMA fight. His jiu-jitsu was just too much for Jared going into this fight. I mean, I really looked for Jason to make some big noise in 2012.
And with Jason Butcher, you mentioned that was the lightest he fought. Do you think that had any effect on him in the early parts of the fight while he was trying to get going?
No, I think what it was is for the first time he fought a guy who was a better grappler than him. In his previous 2 professional fights, Dom Steele, he was able to knock out relatively quickly. And in the Lamont Stafford fight, Lamont came in that fight, didn't really have a submission background that could hold water to Jason. Jason was able to armbar him in about 2 minutes. So going into the Jared Combs fight, Combs had a significant wrestling background, obviously far more fights. And I just think it was one of those things where Jason just needed to fill out. Jared had a well-known head kick. I mean, this guy has knocked people out with his head kick, and we wanted to be a little bit cautious about that. I say we because I was in his corner. So, we wanted to be cautious about that particular attribute that Jared brought to the table. But we knew if we got to the ground that Jason's jiu-jitsu would be far superior.
Yeah, and he wins by triangle choke 3 minutes of the very first round. He proves to 3-0 as a pro. Well, Nicole, main event at SFC 11, another one of your guys, Cornelius Godfrey, going against Thomas Campbell. This was for the first ever pro bantamweight title in the state of Kentucky. And, Cornelius Godfrey, mentioned his wrestling skills that he brings to the table. Is wrestling at the University of Marshall, or is it Marshall University, whoever, Marshall. And he just does a fantastic job here in this fight and comes away with a win.
He was a state champion wrestler, but probably more importantly, he was a pro boxer. And the other thing is that he's just got a tremendous work ethic. He's always in shape. Every fight he comes into, he's always been the bully. It's kind of hard to think of someone at 135 pounds being a bully, but Cornelius, every person he's fought, when he is supposed to lose, he has just devastated these guys. It makes it look easy. I mean, the last guy he fought, Chris Wright out of Tennessee, was easily considered one of the top prospects in the South, was supposedly going to sign a deal with Strikeforce. Cornelius finishes him in pretty quick fashion. Thomas Campbell had already fought in Strikeforce. Again, goes to the second round. Cornelius is able to easily maintain, control the position on the mat, and again, just get a TKO victory. So Cornelius is another one. At 135 pounds, he's definitely on a fast track. I could see him with a larger organization, but definitely by the end of 2012.
Yeah, and Cornelius Godfrey winning in the second round via strikes at 355. Also on that card, local favorite, guy who fights out of Ashland where this event was held, Jesus Huey Contreras, and he went against against Zach Odom here, and Contreras made sure that the hometown fans went home happy.
Yeah, Huey Contreras has definitely got a strong following there nationally. He trains with Aaron Stevens at Stevens Valley Judo. I've known Aaron for a very long time. He's a really good instructor, really knows how to put fighters through the paces to prepare them for these type of opportunities. Huey, I've seen fight firsthand. He actually knocked out one of my teammates. He's got a lot of power in his hands. He has a lot of don't quit kind of mentality. It'll be interesting to see what he does at the professional level. I know Aaron will have him more than prepared to take his game to the next level, so it'll be interesting to see how Huey progresses.
Yeah, and this is his first professional fight, and he wins in his pro debut. Huey Contreras, that might be another name to keep an eye on around the Kentucky and in SFC Spartan Fighting Championship. Returns to action next month in Moorhead, Kentucky. Also around the region this weekend, all right, West Virginia, they recently sanctioned MMA, and the NAAFS will make its West Virginia debut this weekend.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to see how this show pans out. I'm not actually attending the show, but I am going to keep my ears to the ground, so to speak. We do have a teammate, Stephanie Frausto, which is Zorda Gurgel's little sister, is going to be fighting there. There's a ton of high-level guys from around the area: Josh Stansberry, Joey Holt, Mickey Hughes, Rick Day, Nathan Bryan out of Morgantown, West Virginia. So there's a lot of local, regional talent that are going to be a part of this show. It's good for West Virginia to start getting some of these big organizations to start showcasing or having the opportunity to showcase their events, their organizations within the state. There's been a couple of shows so far in West Virginia. Don't really know how the numbers have been or how the organization has been. I think the NAAFS will do a good thing there in Morgantown. And as far as, we both have talked, there's talk of a show going on in April in Huntington, West Virginia, that also with an organization that has their act together. So it's good for the sport anytime new states start to open the doors for us to come in and really showcase what the sport's all about.
Yeah, and again, you mentioned the organizations going into it, making headway, and there's a lot of fight fans in West Virginia, as you know firsthand. Yeah. So it's definitely great, as you mentioned, for the sport, and also great for MMA fans in West Virginia. They don't have to cross state borders, whether it's Ohio, Kentucky, or Pennsylvania, to see some fights. And and hopefully this will just help propel the sport there in the Mountaineer State. All right, well, that'll do it for this week's show. Appreciate you joining in. Check us out again every week on YouTube, our YouTube channel, In the Cage Show. Also, that's our Twitter handle, In the Cage Show, and also follow us on Facebook as well. We'll be back next week. We'll recap the UFC on Fox card. Who's going to win the right to face Johnny Bones Jones for the light heavyweight championship, and also who's going to win the right to fight Anderson Silva for the middleweight title, Chael Sonnen or Michael Bisping. And we'll also look at the Strikeforce coming up in Columbus and other things that are going on around the region. For Dustin Ware, for our production crew, I am Milan Jordan. Thank you for joining us in the cage.